Let me say a very special good evening and welcome to Hot Off the Press Media. Mr. Gary Griffith, you're with me. Great. Thank you so much for being a part of this evening show. Please tell me how I can properly address you because I'm thinking, should I call you Captain Gary Griffith? Does he still go by that name?
You could call me Gary. Gary is very good for me. I'm fine with Gary.
Great. Thank you so much for talking with us, Gary. So, as I mentioned to my listeners, you are no stranger to media and to public life. You wore many hats. You want to recap for us some of the hats that you would have worn in the past and what you're currently doing now?
Well, yeah, it started off. I went to St. Mary's College for 8 years. I then joined the Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force as a commissioned officer. I then spent a year in the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, in the United Kingdom. I returned to Trinidad and Tobago. I was the youngest, just about the youngest officer to serve our country during the attempted coup. I then I was a platoon commander, company commander. I was in the Engineer Battalion. I was the first Trinidad and Tobago citizen to return home with a UN Peacekeeping Medal after being in command of the administration, finance, logistics for the CARICOM troops in Haiti. I've been the military attaché for two prime ministers and a president. I was then an opposition senator, temporary. I then became National Security Advisor, Minister of National Security, and Commissioner of Police.
You've been very busy over the years, Mr. Griffith.
Yeah, but the most important hat I've worn is that being a father and a husband.
Interesting indeed. I want to talk a little bit of your political life. Of course, you
Sure.
started politics, I would say, at a fairly young age. Was it what you expected when you got into politics?
Well, strange enough, I've never been, people believe that I am a veteran in politics. Really and truly, I'm not. I have only been personally involved in politics just for a couple of years when I was Minister of National Security from 2013 to 2015. Before that, I was a temporary senator once or twice on a few occasions. I was a security advisor, commissioner of police. So I've never really been in the cut and thrust of politics. People know me well, they know me well. I've made myself very accessible to the media. But so I've never really been, there's persons who have been in politics for 10, 20, 30 years. I have not. Said the only time that I've actually been officially involved in politics is being a Minister of National Security. But I do understand politics. I do understand serving people. I do understand leadership. I do understand management. I do understand what it means to be productive, to be faithful to your country, to be loyal to your country. So that I think that about the concept that people believe that Gary is so much into politics. I am not. This year, me being a political leader of a party is just the second time I've really been involved in politics. I've just been over a year now.
Are you pleased with the type of politics that's displayed in Trinidad and Tobago?
No, definitely not. It is disgusting. It is classless. It is low. It's despicable, and that's the reason why when you look at most of the political parties, the persons who actually are politicians, some of them really will not get a proper, most of them, I should say, wouldn't get a proper job in the private or public sector if they're not into politics. Because the best persons that usually you have seen in the days in the Manning, Pandey, Eric Williams era, you'll be getting some of the best, the most qualified persons in security, health, education, the economy, sport. You're not getting that anymore. Because so many people have become so turned off by politics, they're not going to throw themselves into that crab in a barrel bacchanal. So the quality people that you would like to get in politics, you're not going to get. The persons who get into politics, they never thought they would ever be in that position, being called minister or member of parliament and having drivers and stuff. They become never see come see. And they think that politics is all that you do is the bad talk, to attack, to discredit, to destroy, to undermine. It is very unfortunate, and that does nothing to develop the country. My style of politics has always been one to show solutions, to show that I can deliver, to show that I can serve. And it is unfortunate, I spent half of my political life trying to defend lies based on misrepresentation, misinformation as it pertains to myself.
We're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm happy you went there. There is a lot being said about Gary Griffith in the media today. We can go back from Gary Griffith under the incarnation of the UNC or Gary Griffith as Commissioner of Police. And anyhow you look at it, there is the perception that Gary Griffith is this confrontational person. Gary Griffith is someone who, if given the opportunity to talk, he attacks, he goes on the defense. Gary Griffith, as you are now, your political life, from what you just explained, has been an uphill battle. It's been a fight in some places, and in some places you had to fight with people who you once worked with in government and other places.
Yeah, definitely, and you're correct. It's not about confrontational, but you see, when it comes to my character, my reputation, my name, it means a lot to me. It means everything to me. So regardless if you're a prime minister, you're in government, and you try to discredit me, even it's true, no problem. But you see, when you lie, I hate people who lie. And that, I mean, even in this present government, if you look at all the things they've said, massive well-oiled criminal industry, guns being given to everybody, guns being sold at a price, corruption. He was involved in killing these two men on the throat, and all of these lies. I am left with no choice but to expose the liars. And that's why at least 13 of them are in court right now, from Keith Rowley, Fitzgerald Hines, Stanley John, Bliss C. Prasad, Lizana Liebert, Dennis Deming, you name it. The list is long, Rhoda Barra, the list is long and distinguished. Because if it is you lie and you defame my character, I am going to take you to court and sue you for everything you have. And that is my right. So if people see that as being confrontational, even as you want to deal with the issues, we can deal with the issues. And strange enough, when I was Minister of National Security, people recall there was never one confrontation with myself on anyone. Because as a minister, my job was to serve people. There was never any issue with me and the opposition at the time. In fact, I was a minister that gave Kit Rowley state security, which never happened before for leader of the opposition outside of an election period. My style was one that I am here to serve people. I'm not here to be involved in the bacchanal and but when I was commissioner of police, I had to be confrontational. It was different to being a politician because there were criminal elements, some not just in sagging pants and a white vest, but those in shirt and tie and suit, some even being affiliated to those in parliament. And I was forced to fight hard to put back that degree of security and safety to this country because the criminal elements were taking full control. And because of that, I had to fight to keep my reputation secure. I had to be confrontational when people lie. And again, it is healthy debate. Even as I was just on, for example, 91.9, and it was hilarious. Juliet Davy and Mr. Rooker, they came with a barrage of questions, and every single answer I gave, facts, data, document, they couldn't handle it, and they had to cut me off because people just love the bacchanal and the gossip and the lies. But when you meet me, and I'm here to give data, facts. So listen to Amy Brown, for example, recently misleading the country to say that the U.S. decided to shut down SORT because of gross human rights violation. Yet SORT, not one person has ever been arrested by SORT. So you know it is based on the government lying to the U.S. Embassy and giving them false information because you wanted to shut down. So these are the things I will fight for. I will fight to clear my name, to clear the names of others wrongfully accused. And persons may not like that, but all I can say for them, tough.
Gary Griffith, I remember when you were appointed as Commissioner of Police, I was one of the talk show hosts who was not in support of your appointment. In fact, I think for most of your life as Commissioner of Police, I was looking for a flaw in Gary Griffith. I think it had a lot to do with my political affiliation at the time. I felt Gary Griffith could not have sat in the Commissioner of Police's chair and not be political. However, during your stint of commission, I think it was after your first year, my thoughts about you would have changed. And I'll tell you why. I realized that Gary Griffith wasn't playing political football with the office of the Commissioner of Police when I started to see you going after what people would perceive to be big fish. And then I had to literally pull myself back and say, okay, maybe he's going in there to actually do something. Because your initial thoughts would be, okay, a politician turned commissioner of police. Interesting. Where is this going to go? Do you think those like me in the past who would have believed you went in there to play politics, do you believe you were given a fair deal as commissioner of police, or you were judged straight out the gate?
Well, the thing about it is that eventually, when polls started taking place, the Nigel Henry poll, the Police Service Commission poll, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service poll, it had me as the highest public satisfaction on any citizen in any poll ever done in Trinidad and Tobago. It was, I think the last one was 89% of the public supported me or had no issue with me being commissioner or returning. But you are correct. Many persons would not have been comfortable because, again, if it is that you are affiliated to the PNM, knowing that I was a Minister of National Security in the UNC, and then even UNC persons would have been concerned about it because remembering my stance of life sport, my stance of, I stated that I'm not going to lie in the matter with the Police Complaint Authority. And with that, even I remember the UNC abstained. So I was being targeted, monitored by both sides, and I had to prove myself. I had to prove my worth, and that is the same I operated as Minister of National Security. Even though I was Minister of National Security, if I see that something is wrong, I was going to stand firm on it, and I was not going to succumb to political pressure, similar to the life sport situation as an example. And likewise, if it is that when I became commissioner, there was a lot of pressure by the government to try to see how fast I could arrest political opponents. And I could not do that unless there was enough evidence. So I stood firm. I made enemies on both sides, but I think the persons who supported me the most would have been the average person in the street that would have seen that I am doing what no commissioner would have done before, being on the ground, willing to put my life on the line for my country, transforming the police service, which when I joined, it was 14%. When I left as commissioner, it was 59%. So it became the least trusted and confident that the public had to the most trusted. And then in a year later after I left, it went down to 8% from 59%. So yes, there would have been persons that would have been concerned, but I just stood firm. I remembered that my oath in office, my God, my country, and the citizens of the country. And I was not there to please any government that would have put me there or to try to please the opposition because I was part of them in the past. Those things would have been irrelevant to me.
At what point do you think you fell out of grace with the politicians as commissioner of police?
Well, I think it's about two or three things. Firstly, when the Prime Minister tried to get me to arrest persons in their home, and it's because he of his ignorance and understanding law. And you say people in the PNM speak about it, but I mean, when I speak fact and I speak in any debate, they have to shut up because they did not understand when the Prime Minister saw several persons involved by the poolside. They're saying the Prime Minister said I had a right to arrest them. It was because of his ignorance and understanding in law. Public health regulations meant you could only arrest persons in public, not in their private capacity, in their private place.
So
he didn't understand the law.
One minute. Stick up in 1 minute.
Sure.
I want to be able to understand what you're saying correctly. So you're saying that the Prime Minister wanted you to act a particular way or to arrest people? Is it that he was telling you who you should arrest or who you shouldn't arrest?
Yeah, well, remember, he said in the interview when they asked about it, he said, I will not tell the commissioner what to do, but nobody must be above the law. And if people are not doing, if people are breaching the public health regulations, he has a right to arrest them regardless of where they come from. Basically, alluding to the fact that if the persons were a different ethnic composition, it meant that we were allowing them to go free, which was a total lie, because if you recall in Residence nightclub, it was the same persons that over 63 of them were arrested. But what he figured is that because he saw a large number of people, it meant that the police had a right to arrest them. He did not understand his own laws. This was not a state of emergency. This was public health regulations. Under public health regulations, you could only arrest persons if they converge, I think, in more than a group of 10 in a public place. So if it is that you have your own pool by your pool side, and 3 or 4 of you all are there, I could not arrest you. If I done that, I would have been no different to the senior police officers who foolishly arrested a number of people in 2011 during the state of emergency, when a number of people were arrested wrongfully because they were being pressured by the same politicians. I don't operate that way, so I told Keith Rowley basically where to get off. Likewise, then there was a situation where my public support became so high. There was rumors that he became very concerned that he was getting like 40-something% national support and mine was close to the 80s. And then there was a final where I was being pressured constantly towards seeing how fast I could arrest political opponents, and I could not go out of my way to arrest persons unless there's enough evidence. So it seemed that the government had a little concern on those three things, and obviously trying to hoping that they could find commissioners who would do their bidding. But notice 3 years later, still no senior opposition member has been arrested, because unless you have evidence, you can't arrest them. So what it turned to was the red herring of firearms, the reason I say red herring is because it was the same prime minister who was harassing me to try to get a firearm dealership for somebody he knew in Tobago to sell hundreds of more firearms.
What?
So it showed
Wait, 1 minute. I would like you to repeat what you just said.
Yeah, sure. So there started being this concern about legal firearms being issued to citizens. But the same prime minister who had this concern was giving me a name of persons to give firearm use and license dealership, not a permit, dealership in Tobago, so that they could sell hundreds of more firearms or thousands of more firearms. So it showed that his concern of firearms being sold wasn't the issue.
So
it was a red herring.
Is that a normal practice? Is that a normal practice for politicians to give you a list, or any commissioner of police, a list of persons who can be preferred for firearms?
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I remember when I was Minister of National Security, I'd be bombarded by other ministers to contact the commissioner to find out what's the status of their firearm application. There's nothing wrong with that. You can humbly ask. You can't pressure. You can't intimidate. So likewise, this government, the list was long and distinguished. There were hundreds upon hundreds of applications from ministers, senior public officials who got found for themselves, for their family, for their loved ones, for their friends. But I didn't pull string. They went through the process, and if they adhered to the criteria, they will get it. Which was the concern I had, the hypocrisy these people had. Where it was okay for you to have firearms for you and your friends in high places, and then when I was providing firearms for the simple police constable, for the fire officer, for the soldier, for the small businessman, for the farmer, for the hunter, for the person involved in sports and shooting, that became a problem. So what it has done, however, it has backfired, because 95% out of the country are law-abiding citizens. So they understood what I was doing. I was providing firearms to make sure that persons could protect themselves because of the state's inability to defend them, and I did the right thing, especially the fact that during my 3 years.
In other words, you believe that law-abiding citizens should have access to legal firearms. Do you still hold this opinion now?
Definitely, until we could reach a point where I was getting to ensure that the state could lock down the country to such an extent that we can protect you without your need for a firearm, similar to Canada, similar to the United Kingdom. Until we reach that point, it is your right to apply for your firearm, and it is the right of the commissioner to give you that firearm if you adhere to the criteria, which is what I did. So when Keith Rowley, and I use the word carefully but accurately, lied to the country to say that there was a government policy, there is no such thing as a government policy to issue firearms. There's a law, and I adhered to the law. And in that 3 years, when I was commissioner, I gave 6,000 firearms were issued out of 25,000 applications. All of them were outstanding because commissioners before me, most of them never went on a range or held a firearm in years, so they were fearful of it. And out of that 25,000, only 6,000 got from me, and 3,000 of those were through law enforcement officials, which meant that 3,000 were civilian. That was 0.3% of the population, 0.3%. So when Rowley tries with its mischief to say that we were giving out firearms to everyone, that was a lie. 0.3% of the population. And in that 0.3%, not one was lost, not one was stolen, not one was used for a crime. So, and in fact, dozens of lives were saved because of it.
So, I don't think the public understands clearly enough the role between the Office of the Commissioner of Police, the Minister of National Security, and the National Security Council. Help us to understand this. Is it that the National Security Minister is, in layman terms, the supervisor for the Commissioner of Police? How does the two offices work?
Well, no, definitely not. I've been the only person who has been a Minister of National Security and a Commissioner of Police. So I know the demarcation lines clearly. The Minister of National Security has a major role to play in crime reduction. Fitzgerald Hines' perception is that the minister's job is just to provide resources when the head of the protective services asks. That is ignorance at the highest level. Because when I was Minister of National Security, I was very instrumental in providing policies, tools, equipment, technology to transform the police service. So when we had things like the National Operations Center, we had the Emergency Response, the Rapid Response Unit, the Community Comfort Patrol, the National Security Special Operation Group, the National Security Training Academy. All of these things played a big part towards that being the highest reduction in serious crime in 31 years. So that's the role of a Minister of National Security, to assist in providing policies upon which the Commissioner will then operationalize those policies. Fitzgerald Hines has never come up with one policy because he's not trained, qualified, or experienced to understand that the height of law enforcement. I think he left as a police constable, and the results are. The Commissioner of Police, he is the operational person. He or she is supposed to be tactical, operational, and be able to understand how you transform the police service, how you measure their performance, how you make them accountable. Commissioners before and after me were not able to do that. So by me making them accountable and transforming them, it caused a massive increase in public trust and confidence in the police. It caused the highest reduction in violent crime in 17 years. It caused people to start believing and trusting in the police. It caused the highest visibility you would have seen. It caused the fastest response you will get to a distress call, which was 5 minutes. It made us accessible through the online reporting, the police app, and so forth. Things that were never done before. We brought in, Commissioner, you bring in technology in the 21st century, such as being able to monitor criminal activity, seeing how you can put an end to kidnapping, put an end to home invasions, which is what we did. After I left as Commissioner, all of these things were cancelled. So that's the role of the Commissioner of Police. And then in National Security Council, the Minister becomes a subset of the National Security Council, but they move as a more holistic aspect of national security, which can involve liaising with international allies, finding the type of equipment that we can get from other sources that the Minister of National Security may not have the budget for, and then trying to find a holistic approach towards crime reduction using different arms in the National Security Council, inclusive of the Prime Minister, possibly the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Sport, the Minister of Youth Affairs. They all play a part which is known as secondary crime prevention. So that's the category between the National Security Council, of which the Minister is a part of. The Commissioner of Police is not part of the National Security Council. He or she is an advisor.
Okay, understood. Let's talk about the Stanley John report. So there was talks that you are against the public finding out exactly what is in the Stanley John report. Is there any facts to that?
Right, okay, so to clarify, there were two reports. There was the Stanley John report and there was the audit report, two totally different things. So I have to clarify to 91.9 with all the mistakes they were making on that. At no time has there ever been anything to stop the Stanley John report from going public. The thing, however, is that comments made in that report, if those comments are defamatory to me, without me having the opportunity to clarify it, I will sue them for every cent they have for misleading the country. So in Stanley John report, you remember one thing that was leaked by Rhea Tate of the Express, Rhea Tate being the virtual public relation officer for the PNM. Anytime Rhea Tate does an article, it's to support the PNM. They started pushing these little extracts of the Stanley John report. One of the things Stanley John said, it was a massive, well-oiled criminal enterprise. This proved to be one of the biggest lies you could ever get from a previous judge, because 4 years later, a massive, well-oiled criminal enterprise, not one person convicted, not one person charged, not one person arrested, not one person even held. So this was such a massive, well-oiled criminal industry. And then he had the audacity to say that the law was broken. So he's also in court with me. He's going to go on a witness stand to show to the country, show us this massive, well-oiled criminal industry that you claimed. Show us the evidence, show us the names, show us the witnesses, show us the data. Failure to do that will show that you're a fraud because you have misled the country with an accusation and you can't bring facts, which is something that the PNM is good at. So Stanley John was paid by the state big money to write a report, and this was a previous judge. And then he didn't even have the common courtesy, if not professionalism, to understand that before you complete a report to publish it, you need to speak to the person who you're making accusations about, that being myself. It is known as natural justice. Secondly, the audit report was a separate report. This is when politicians decide to hire civilians and decide to put them along with the police to do an investigation. Only in a banana republic or a communist country can politicians hire civilians to be part of a police investigation. That is madness to start with. By the commissioner of police allowing it, it showed how weak he was, and that's why they threw him out and spat him out like a dog. That's McDonald Jacob to have allowed it in the first place. Additionally, you cannot do an audit of a company and not speak to the head of the company. So again, under natural justice, you did an audit of the police service with firearms, and the commissioner at the time you never spoke to. So it showed that these individuals who the PNM hired were either totally incompetent or complicit by being so stupid not to speak to myself. Additionally, more important than all, if they still wanted to go public and read it out, fuck you, knock your socks off. I would have sued you for every cent you have if you made any accusation that was false and misleading to defame me without evidence. What Rowley wanted to do, as he said, the country could remember, we are going to lay this in Parliament. Have you ever heard an audit report being laid in Parliament? Parliament is where you go to speak about laws being changed. But he's a smart guy. Parliament is the one place you can go and lie to discredit people and not be sued, which is what he did with Emailgate. He went in Parliament to read out Emailgate so we couldn't sue him. And he tried to do the same thing with me with the audit report. If you wanted to speak about the audit report, go out in public and read it out. And quote, I would have sued Rowley and for every single all the polish he uses on his bald head, I would have sued him for. But he's smart.
Mr.
He wanted to go to Parliament.
Mr. Griffith, I know that you're in full flight and you're pelting political peacock left, right, and center. But I want us to keep the interview respectful.
Aisha, if you don't like it, let them call the ballhead police. I'm telling you what I feel.
Mr. Griffith?
I'm sorry, that's how you get it. That's how you get it from Gary. I don't have respect for people who don't have respect for themselves or for me. Right? This man has lied. He has misled the country. He has said the nastiest things. Do not expect me to have respect for him. I'm sorry. It doesn't go that way. So respect is reciprocal. It goes both ways.
Mr. Griffith, the Minister of National Security and the Minister of Foreign Affairs held a press conference earlier this week.
Yes.
And some serious information was given to the public as it relates to the Office of the Commissioner of Police and funding for an arm of the police from foreign entities. Do you care to comment on it?
Yeah, sure. They were all lies. And again, it goes right back. When they speak, it's just like Fitzgerald when he claimed that I brought in component parts to change semi-automatic to automatic. He's going to be for the plan in court on that as well. You see, when you lie, you have to prove it. Notice all that they said. And the only reason they did this happened 3 years ago, right in the bottom of this press conference. Mr. Mann in Ireland contacted ministers and said, look, we have to take down Gary because Gary went up for St. Joseph. He wins St. Joseph, we lose the election. Panic set in. So let me clarify. When Amy Brown made that false and misleading statement that the U.S. government decided to shut down SORT and not provide any further funding for SORT because of human rights violation. To start with, SORT never received funding from the United States. So that was the first lie. Nothing they've ever received from the United States. That's one. Two, not one person has been arrested from SORT for any criminal matter. So that as it pertains to the two persons being killed. So what is the human right violation? Three, you are trying to discredit the United States by trying to state that they will shut down, they will blacklist a unit because of human rights violations, even though no one has even been arrested as yet. You're trying to say that the United States will predetermine a matter that is still being investigated, because there were other police officers and other police stations these individuals were also interacting with. So they may have been the ones that were involved in this incident, for all we know. So are you trying to tell me that the United States would blacklist a unit without an investigation being completed and without the persons, anybody being charged? Additionally, if you recall on the front page of yesterday's or today's papers, a prisoner was killed. Why don't they say that the prison commissioner is responsible? Why are you think that the United States is going to blacklist the prison service? Are you going to shut down the prison service? Since I left, over 100 police killings have taken place. Is it that you blame McDonald, Jacob, and Ola Christopher? Is it that the United States is going to shut down the GB, the IATF, the Special Branch, the MOPS? Additionally, the SNU, Special Naval Unit from the Coast Guard, where the U.S. provide funding and weapons. They use the same weapon that the U.S. provided to be involved in a kidnapping and murder of a citizen. How come the U.S. still providing financing and funding for the same SNU unit? How come that SNU unit was not shut down? How come Hines and Amy Brown didn't say that the Chief of Defense Staff is responsible for what happened? Trinidad and Tobago, open your eyes and realize the desperation by these two. It was mind-boggling. It was full of lies. It was full of misinformation. And what I have just spoken to you were the facts. So what Amy Brown needs to show now, show that the United States blacklisted SWAT because of the situation with the two persons being, show explain why it is that the SNU is still being funded. Show what funding the U.S. ever gave to SWAT in the first place, and explain why would the U.S. shut down blacklist a unit if it is that nobody was ever charged, arrested, and the matter was still under investigation. The reason why this happened is the PNM, utilizing senior political police officers, kept going to the U.S. Embassy to give false information about the Special Operation Response Team. And let me add, this is the same U.S. Embassy where you would have seen the video of a U.S. ambassador stating that Trinidad and Tobago is blessed to have a commissioner like Gary Griffith. No U.S. ambassador in the history of Trinidad and Tobago ever gave a commendation to any citizen as they did to me. And let me add further that I was so close with the U.S. Embassy, I met with them, and they voiced their concern and disgust by the same government, inclusive of which Amy Brown holds as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who are for having very close affiliation involved with certain countries who are not allies of the United States and border on being even known as communist countries.
Gary Griffith, there are some who believe you were acting like a law unto yourself as Commissioner of Police. What would you say to those people?
Please show where, you see, people will say that. But again, it was the highest reduction in crime in 17 years. It was the most number of police officers arrested. We put an end to kidnapping by actually arresting police officers involved. I was able to reduce the 89% police absenteeism in court. And every single time anyone had a concern about police officers, I paid with them to work with the PCA. The PCA never got so much support as they did working with myself. I gave the citizens the opportunity to do online reporting so they can make reports without having to go to a police station to have it covered up. I put systems to put an end to the corruption we're hearing about firearms by making sure it doesn't stay in a station where extortion will be taking place. So show one time that there was ever any situation where I abused my authority as a commissioner of police. Had I done so, I would not have been receiving 72 or 73 out of 75 assessments by the Police Service Commission of very good and excellent every year for 3 consecutive years.
Gary Griffith, you're running for the constituency of St. Joseph. Why St. Joseph?
Well, why not? The fact of the matter is that usually St. Joseph is the critical seat. Who wins St. Joseph will win the election. And that becomes the seat that can be the pendulum to decide who's going to be the next government. So with that, I think it was the most appropriate, added to which I've spent half of my life in St. Joseph. On 3 occasions, I was earmarked by the political leader of the UNC to be the candidate for St. Joseph in 2007, 2013, and 2015. So with that, and again, with me being one of 3 major political leaders in the country, 2 of them will obviously be in their safe seat But if it is that I go to the most critical seat, bearing in mind, based on the fact that St. Joseph is a constituency that has continuously been overlooked, me going inside there, making St. Joseph safe again, providing the same needs and goods and services that they require, it will ensure that St. Joseph will easily be pulled away from the PNM, which is what caused this. The country mustn't be fooled. Amy Brown had this letter he claims from the U.S. Embassy 3 years now. Why 2 days ago? This was here 3 or 4 years now. The reason why. Have you ever heard two ministers do a press conference to talk a political opponent for 93 minutes? There was a reason for this. It showed that there was a right decision because that St. Joseph has totally rocked back the PNM. So what they're going to do from now until general election night is to talk me left, right, and center, lie about me, and use some of their political stations to spend all their time. But the good thing is, those floating voters, that 150,000 that were previous ONR, NAR, COP, and now NTA, they make decisions based not on blind politics, blind political loyalty, but who might be the best persons to serve them for the next 5 years. And that is where I will take St. Joseph.
So is it that you're in an alliance with United National Congress as to who's the candidate that's going to represent, or you're going to be going as an independent to the two parties that's running?
Right. Well, I remember in the local government election, there was an alliance. It was very successful. What we did is, as a new party, we wanted to prove our weight. We didn't ask to go to get any safe seats that the UNC previously held. We asked for the 31 hardest seats. And in other words, had we won, and if we won any one of those seats, the UNC would have won the other 30, all 30, because those were the 31 practically safest seats that the PNM had. We're talking about seats in Laventille, Port of Spain, Diego Martin, Arima, Point Fortin. So going into getting those seats meant that we went into the belly of the beast. And by doing that, we cut and then success by 1,500 to 3,000 that they would have won in 2019 to almost half of that, and in some cases less than 200 in several of those seats. It hurt them hard, and that is why you would have seen a 60,000 difference in votes between the Alliance and the PNM. 60,000 difference in votes in a 30% voter turnout. In a general election, you will get probably 60%. In that 60%, you multiply by 2, that's 120,000 difference. That's the exact number in the 2010 election. And more importantly, what I did is to make sure I set up a foothold throughout Trinidad, in that I worked in areas that no prime minister, no political leader, and really and truly no member of parliament ever walked. I walked to the top of the hills in Scorpion and Caranage, all through Paramin, all up in the hills in Simeon Road to the top of Simeon Road, all in the hills in the highest points in Cocorite, all throughout Laventille, La Florison, through Beetham, Sealots, all through the hills in Arima, throughout San Fernando, San Grande, and everywhere I walked, you heard PNM supporters stating, I have never seen a PNM prime minister here. I have never seen a political leader here. And I have never seen my member of parliament walking here. And that's what I intend to do. It's the same thing in St. Joseph. I will walk the length and breadth of St. Joseph that no politician will do. And I'm not doing it to be cosmetic. I am doing it to serve, which is the same thing I did as a commissioner of police. In my first 2 months, I visited all 77 stations. I was in patrols, roadblocks, 2, 3 in the morning that the media would not know. That is what you call leadership by example, and that is how I intend to serve St. Joseph.
Gary Griffith, some people will say you had a falling out with members of the UNC, and now you're going back into an alliance with them. What has changed within the UNC from the time you left them to now? And is it that you're going to go back and work with the same people you would have walked away from?
In fact, I'm actually going to work with the PNM as well, and that's the difference. When I get into government, it's not a case of who's PNM and who's UNC. When I was Minister of National Security, as I mentioned, there was never one sense of animosity or bitterness across the floor when I was Minister of National Security.
But it could be
members of Parliament.
It could be perceived that way. It could be perceived that way sometimes when you speak. It could be perceived as though if you win St. Joseph, in the next election that you will not cooperate with whoever forms the government? Because I don't know if you're contesting all 41 or if you plan to partner with whoever is going to lead the country.
Right, and let me correct that. You have to just look at my track record. As I said, when I was Minister of National Security, I was a UNC, there was a UNC government. I wrote to all 41 members of parliament and I asked, I would like to come and meet you in your constituency. And again, accepted that most of the hotspot areas were in constituencies of the PNM. And most of them invited me. So I went to all these areas where it is that, well, they only had 12 seats. But I went with Alicia Hospitales. I went to several of those other places because I did not see UNC and PNM. I didn't see red and yellow. I saw black, red, white, and black. And because of that, I worked my tail off, especially in those areas that the PNM constituencies controlled, because those were the hotspot areas that we had to reduce crime. And that is why I could tell you, not one incident, you cannot find one incident in those 2 years as a minister where there was any confrontation, bad blood. Imagine, I was the first Minister of National Security that gave an opposition leader 24/7 special branch security outside of an election period. That is the type of professional I will be. And likewise, when I was Commissioner of Police, I did the same thing. I asked to meet with all 41 members of parliament. So when I hold a position, my track record is there to prove I don't ever show any degree of bias based on political affiliation. You know why? Because I remember what I did when I took my oath in office.
Interesting indeed. Mr. Griffith, before we conclude the interview, I want to find out from you, if St. Joseph persons are to give you an opportunity to serve them, what is the first thing you're going to do if elected into office?
Accessibility. Actually, that last question is the most important question. I know it's the persons on both sides of the political fence. One of the biggest problems that I've seen in this country is that 41 people apply to be members of parliament in the lower house. And you, one will win, one will lose. So you'll have to say whether it's 22-19, 23-18. And at least 17, 18, 19 will become ministers in a ministry. And guess what? They spend 95% of their time in that ministry. You know why, Aisha? Because that is where you get your Prado. That's where you get your blue lights. That is where you get the security opening the door for you. That's where you have your massive office, the soldiers and the police saluting you. And you forget who put you there, which were the persons in your constituency. And they suffer. This happens all the time. I would love to see the day when 41 members of parliament become, and they remain as members of parliament, and ministers become ministers separate and apart, because it is difficult to do both. And sometimes if you can't balance, you stick and spend more time in the perks. So most persons who are ministers, who are members of parliament in the lower house, you know how much time they spend in their constituency? 2 hours on a Wednesday, because Thursday is cabinet, Friday is parliament, Tuesday sometimes you have to go in the Senate, Monday you're doing all sort of things in for your ministry, and then Saturday and Sunday you're cutting ribbon and attending functions as a minister. So you spend 2 hours a day out of 2 hours a week out of 168 to look after the needs of those persons who voted for you in your constituency. I intend to do different. I intend to spend my time in my constituency serving persons. And unfortunately, not knocking Terence, but it's the same thing with himself. The Minister of Health is a very difficult job. He spends most of his time in his ministry, and that's why his constituents have been neglected. I intend to do opposite. I intend to put my priority on St. Joseph first, and whatever ministry I will hold, if any, after.
Are you contesting all 41 seats? NTA, that is.
It depends on an alliance, if and when it is formed, and that is where a decision will be made. Usually when that happens, it's an automatic defeat for the PNM, as you would have seen in 1986 and 2010. If it is that we go separate, it usually will split the votes, as they say it, and it will cause the PNM to win the marginal seats, which is what happened in 1981, 1991, and 2007. I'm in it to win it. I intend to win, but what I need to do is to make sure that there's going to be some degree of mutual respect and understanding to avoid the hiccups that may have taken place from 2010 to 2015.
Interesting. I'm going to take your closing comments, Mr. Griffith.
All I would say is that I hope that persons can understand there will always be 150 to 200,000 PNM and UNC till they die. And that is your right. I have to respect that. Both political parties have done tremendous jobs in trying to help the country. They have made mistakes. They will continue to make mistakes. So will I. What I would ask you is yes, you have those independent voters who will decide to stay with the NTA and shift in a certain direction. But for those persons on either side of the political fence, I ask you, do not try to put your loyalty to party to turn it into hatred for the other party. That has caused a problem in this country. It is your right to support your parent till you're dead or born at UNC and are going to die at UNC. It gives you no right to demonize and discredit those on the other side of the political fence because of who they support or even because of their racial composition. That has killed this country. I intend to find a way to use politics to unite Trinidad and Tobago. I have seen too many senior politicians go out of their way to divide Trinidad and Tobago for their own political gain. I intend to change that.
Gary Griffith, you have a lot of uniting to do because you would have made controversial statements over the years, like the famous crush them like cockroaches that was assumed to be alluded to a particular section of people, among other things.
But when I stated, no, but let me tell you one thing where there's no compromise. You are Biden citizens and criminals. Because when it is I stated that if you rape somebody, you're a cockroach. If you kill somebody, you're a cockroach. If you kidnap somebody, you're a cockroach. For you or anybody to see that as a racial connotation, it shows how low you are in your intellectual ability to automatically label certain persons of that. So if people rape and kill, if somebody decides to kill your mother or rape your daughter, you wouldn't have a problem calling them a cockroach. And the point of the matter is, for this country, too long, we continue to go out of our way to protect the rights of criminal elements. Somebody that rapes a little child, you're a bloody cockroach. And you know what? In fact, a cockroach is better because the cockroach wouldn't have done that. But we run to defend murderers and rapists. Oh God, you mustn't call them that. What? Are you serious? Two persons were involved in sexual assault on 6-year women. They die. I state, well, they will never do that again. And two ministers jump up. Oh God, Gary, don't say that about them now. But what about these 6-year women who are traumatized, who are worrying that any day these two men could come and kill them? We have looked after the rights of criminal elements for far too long. I intend to turn the scales of justice to look after the rights of law-abiding citizens. So when it comes to that demarcation line, there's no compromise with me. If you're a criminal, you're a criminal. If you're a law-abiding citizen, I'm fighting for you. If you're a criminal, I intend to crush you. And who vex? Loss.
Thank you so much, Mr. Griffith. All the best to you. Thanks for chatting with us.
Take care. Enjoy your weekend. Take care.